Being limitless is knowing your success and your growth are built on a radical belief in yourself. Limitless is honoring your purpose, your health, and impact above all else. Limitless is never playing small because the more alive you feel in your life, the more growth and success you attract. Hi, my name is Jamie Ratterman, and I am a holistic business coach, meaning I am just as invested in growing your health as I am in growing your wealth. With 11 plus years in brand and social media marketing, I help rebellious entrepreneurs master marketing, embody leadership, and say fuck it to the hustle. This show is here to encourage you to become more radically aware of your self-imposed limits, to break free of your shoulds, and to expand your brand into a movement led by you. Hello, lovelies. Welcome to episode 31 of the Limitless Podcast. Today, I invited my Colombian fellow goddess, Kristina Knapp, to join us today. Today, we talk a lot about video content, video marketing, and how important it is. And I know some of you are like, oh, and some of you are like, oh, I love it. I can hear it already. I don't even have to ask about how you're feeling about Reels, TikTok, and everywhere in between. So this is the episode to help you embrace video content. This is the episode that we talk about what happens when we see our clients start to use it and what to think about, but also, of course, why it's so important for your business to prioritize this type of content. So I wanted to bring on Kristina to give that whole new perspective. But of course, this is a part of my signature program, Marketing Mastery. It's an entire module that we talk about how to not only create video content, get past some of the limiting blocks that we might feel, but also to be able to think about different video types that are going to perform best on different platforms. So video content is near and dear to my heart, and I really love it for the fact that it builds not only an audience, but also your confidence in who you are. So if you are interested, if video content is one of the many things you want to do as you start to build your brand as an entrepreneur, Marketing Mastery is for you. So if you are intrigued, we'll put it in the show notes. Take a look of what everything that's included with the program, but it is centered on three important things: money, mindset, and messaging. So we are going to make you a absolute badass and being able to clearly share what you're about. We're also going to make sure your offer suite builds into more and more money making. And then of course, the last but not least, there's a mindset to this: growth mindset, resilience, all of the above, to make sure that you get to be that resilient big leader within your business. So if you are interested, and if video content is a place you want to focus, Marketing Mastery is for you. Check out the show notes. Now let's invite Kristina to join us. Hello, please. Welcome to episode 31 of the Limitless Podcast. Today is a special day. Today we are going to bring in the bold, the badass, Kristina Knapp of Elixir Media. I invited her on the podcast today because I've decided, for me and all of my clients, and hopefully for you as a listener, that it is time for us to embrace video. It is time for us to freaking love it, because it gets to be a really fun way to build your social media following. But I know that there's some hangups along the way. I know that there's some like, oh, I don't want to show my face, or, oh, I don't do it as nice as the next person. So why not have Kristina join us today for the fact that she helps people build their short form content. She travels all over the country to do that. And we can have a little bit of a discussion about where we see things going. So officially welcome, Kristina. I need to let you know how I know her. So Kristina and I met each other in Colombia during a retreat. So imagine like palm trees, this beautiful pool, and all of the things. And I'm waking up at like 7 a.m. because I don't know, when you're rested, it's like you wake up naturally, even when you're on vacation. And I sat across from this amazing woman, and we dove in deep to everything we see within business, how expansive entrepreneurship is. Of course, there were some F-bombs dropped. Of course, there were some passionate conversations. And then go figure, later on, I did a Patterns app connection with her, and we're supposed to be lifelong friends. So you are officially meeting somebody who is like my infinity loving friend, but also you're going to find out that she's pretty badass along the way. Kristina, thank you so much for taking time, sharing your voice with me, and I welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you. So tell us a little bit about you. Tell us what you do. Tell us in general, give us a glimpse into your entrepreneurship story.
Yeah. So do you want me to start from like the beginning, how I got into it, or just kind of give a brief overview of what we do now?
I want to hear your full story. Tell us how Kristina came to be.
Okay. So I think my love for business really started when I was working for Michael Kors, actually. And at this point now, this is like, God, 12, 13 years ago. I was working as a part-time, I started as a part-time sales associate, right? Just at a Michael Kors store. And in less than 2 years, very quickly, worked my way up the corporate ladder, so to speak. And by the time I think I had just turned 21, the company was flying me out across the East Coast to turn underperforming stores into top performing stores in the country. So essentially, they would send me out. I would have like 3 weeks hitting the ground, and I would take a store that was completely in the red and I would flip it in less than 21 days. And yeah, and I was by far, the youngest person at the table. Like I said, I started to fall in love with like the back end stuff, the business stuff, what made businesses successful versus, what are things that we think we need that we don't really need, all of that stuff. And then I ended up, having this moment of realization, right? That most of us, that I fondly refer to as corporate dropouts have, where we where I remember I was like in Atlanta. I was at the really high up, and I was sitting on my bed and I was surrounded by all of these like, couture shopping bags. I had like Chanel and Louis, and they were all around me, and I just like burst into tears. And I had this overwhelming realization that, I had already made it to to the version of success that I was fed, my entire life. I had this jet setting career. I was making more money than I knew what to do with, and I felt so empty inside. I felt so lonely. And then after I felt that loneliness, I then realized, holy shit, I don't like the person that I've become. But I really let that, very kind of shark, like that's all I remember thinking of it is they turned me kind of into a shark, and I ran with it because I knew that's how I would do well. And yeah, I just really didn't like who I was. I didn't like my impact on the world. And so I literally called up my boss from the W, and I was like, I'm putting in my 2 weeks. I realized this just isn't for me. And she's like, like, what the fuck, and I remember her saying, is there anything I can convince you to change your mind? And I said, no. And I remember telling her no. And, in my stoic 21-year-old voice was like, I've just realized this isn't my purpose, and I want to find out what is. And so I walked away from that career and went back to school. I went back for economics and business with a plan to change the world. And as life goes,
the fact that you wanted to change the world and you were willing to sit through an economics class is huge.
I literally
the days of macro and microeconomics, even though I remember my professor was very cute, I was just sitting there going like, what is going on?
Yeah, I joke that the biggest thing I learned from, going to school for economics is that like I cannot die from boredom. Like that's it.
I love it. I tested it. I can't die from boredom. What I love about just the beginning of the story is one, I am a corporate dropout. I'm going to put a badge.
Yes.
Badge on my arm, like I am a corporate dropout. I can talk about all the reasons why corporate dropouts are fantastic. But it's like the fact that you had a successful career already before we even get into what she's about to share with us, which is a new version of her successful career. And is the fact that like you did the things that you were supposed to. And I think what's interesting is that for me, at the beginning of my like in general career was that I was going to be a fashion editor. That was like, I worked at Interview Mag. I did some closets. I tried to like I was trying to get my in because I had started a fashion magazine in college. I was like, I'm going to spill right into it. And it was like, I early on, but for the record, I also worked at Victoria's Secret for a month before I found some of these things, just because like when you were like all of these things relate to you in some way. But I just had found that like this sucks. Like, I was like, I don't like these people, like, it doesn't feel like passionate within me, but also there is this, I think, like identity that I think people have to put on themselves in certain corporate industries, maybe not everywhere, that like you were saying, the shark. And I think like I felt like I had to turn off my feelings. I had to, like, if I wanted to be heard amongst all of these really impressive creative people, and like at interview at all these other places, like I had to put on airs about me so that I looked better than this other person. And it was like toxic competition. So fashion, for me, the fashion industry is probably one of the worst. It may have changed since I've been there, but it is definitely like putting on that shark feeling. And then after a while, like your intuition's going, we don't like this. This is, you're going to burn out, or you're going to hate yourself for doing this for this many years. So I love that your big part of this story is like your intuition was like, who gives a fuck about this money? Like,
Yeah.
Like this is not you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I love that. So tell us how this, going back to school, this turned into where you're at now.
Yeah. So basically, right when I got out of school, I was recruited by the botanical garden in our area. And they basically reached out to me and they said, hey, you know, I heard what you used to do for Michael Kors. Can you come and flip the wedding department at the botanical garden? And I'm telling you, Jamie, like the first thing I saw was J-Lo. Okay. J-Lo. And I was like, oh, I can do weddings. I didn't know anything about weddings, right? But I was like, oh, I can do it, right? If I could do it for them, I could do it here too. And so I took it and I figured out I would just take that, you know, as an intermediate. Let me just have a break from all this very, you know, kind of intense work and do something fun. And yeah, and I was really successful there. We flipped the wedding department. I mean, we increased revenue by 300% in less than 12 months, which is a very big deal in the wedding industry because so much of, you know, what you do is planned 1 to 2 years in advance. So to be able to do it that quickly was great. And then my contract was up with them, and I thought, you know, I'm really tired of making other people millions and millions and millions of fucking dollars. Like, if I'm gonna work this fucking hard, like, I'm going to try something for myself. And I had no idea what that was, but I had a local baker reach out, and they were like, hey, you do the Instagram for the botanical garden, right? And I was like, yeah, I do that, you know. And this coming from someone who just is not on social media, right? Like never had an Instagram, looked at Facebook once a month type of shit. And they were like, oh, well, can you help us with it? And I remember being like, just so confused, right? Like, what do you mean? Because 6 years ago, social media managers they weren't even a prominent thing, right? That's something that's very much
it definitely wasn't lucrative. I can tell you that much.
Okay. And so, yeah, anyways, I was like, well, how much would you pay me to do that? And I remember them being like $450 a month. And I was like, oh, $450 a month to make some Instagram posts? Like, yeah, no problem. I can fucking do that, right? Again, just thinking this is going to be an intermediate thing until I figure out what the fuck I want to do. And, you know, and then I did it for the garden and had success. And, you know, a couple other local companies found out about me, and I got to a point where I was like, well, I should probably make this legal, you know, and that was really like the birth of Elixir. And so we started out as a full service, you know, agency, and really built that into a very successful agency, and didn't, you know, move away from that management work until fall of last year, where really reels took off so much that I mean, it became, you know, almost a full-time gig for us.
Oh my God, I love this. I think the biggest things I just hear in your story is that you couldn't have a 5-year plan for it. Like there's no way. Like you had this is where like energy and passion within yourself really, really takes hold. Like maybe now you do because you love your business. You're like, oh, I would love it for it to look like this in a couple of years. But I think there's a side of like, especially early on, like follow your passion, be bold and loud about what you're loving, and then things can come to you. Perfect example. The botanical gardens was just something that turned into the next thing that turned into the next thing. But it's there's a whole side of like being a brand that resonates that has to do with like how fucking passionate are you about what you're doing, or your belief in yourself about what you're doing. So for me, like the fact that Elixir came through because you're like, oh yeah, people need help with this, like, oh, I love how this is turning out, and then you just kept doubling down on the thing that you loved. So I think I find that to be absolutely exciting. So tell me about like, so when you went from social media to more video, like deciding like, okay, social media management is what we do, and decided like, well, I think it's time that this becomes a larger portion in my business. Like how to kind of walk us through the growing pains of what that felt like, since it was like going from one thing to the next that wasn't like easy, as someone who had already built a business off of just social media management.
Yeah, it was such a simple transition, and yet I made it the hardest decision that it ever needed to be, right? Which that's how we are. We're human beings, right? We like to make shit complicated when, hindsight, it was always so simple and makes so much sense. And I think on the other side, it was like, God damn, why didn't we do that years, earlier? But you've got to be in the right mindset. And that's the most important thing. Like you were just saying, those two things, right? Doubling down on what you love and being passionate about it. And to me, those are perhaps the biggest strengths that you can have in business and in life.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, so we were already offering like what we called these media days, and pre Reels and TikTok, that looked like professional branding photo shoots, and what we called like these UGC days for user generated content, where we would literally like take half a day and just shoot a fuck ton of like 60-second tip videos, take a fuck ton of boomerangs, like iPhone photos, because those always just give an element of authenticity and kind of like in real time that professional photos don't quite give. So when Reels came out, I really resisted it. I, like, to my core, am not a technology person. Like I'm just not, but I really love marketing, and I love storytelling, and I love creativity. And so, when TikTok came out, I was probably one of the last to fucking join, right? When Reels, were first gaining traction, I was like, oh, that shit'll fall off. I'm not going to even make one. And it wasn't until I think they're around for 6 months, and I really came to terms like, this shit isn't going anywhere. And we're talking like December 2020. Yeah, that I was like, okay, fine. Right. I'll do it. And I think I immediately really fell in love with it. Well, after I got over the hump of resistance, right? And I just think it's so much fun. And there's so many different possibilities, I think, of how to approach it, and kind of what type of real creator you can be. And yeah, so we started to offer them, as done for you services, and they just started picking up. I mean, these days, it's pretty rare that we do a photo shoot, and that used to be our bread and butter. So being able to kind of focus in on this creative outlet, it just made so much sense.
I love it. Mostly for the fact that you're the kind of, I don't, it's like the 5 stages of grief. You're like your stages of accepting Reels as the thing that was going to happen. Well, one, I think there's a side of this is that, a lot of, especially Instagram, throw things at the wall. So anyone remember brochures, and they try all of these features, some take off, some don't, but then clearly Reels was made out of, like, a decision was made out of the fact that TikTok is winning currently and continues to, and then, but also like they wanted to keep people on the platform, but it was like such a delineation of what the gram was about. It was about photos. It was about sharing, like, it's like literally a photo sharing app, and like at that time, any video that you put up would be like, ooh. I still remember the first time I posted like a video on the gram whenever I was working still in corporate at TripAdvisor at the time. and they were like, we can't post any more video. It's just not as good as the rest.
Yeah.
And it was just like, well, like that's the big difference between when the platform is like, yeah, here's a feature versus like, no, we want you to do this. So I think the things that are coming up for you are exactly the mindset that many people might be feeling still, or like maybe they feel a little guilt because it's like, okay, it's been around for a while. This is ridiculous. I can't keep holding on to this thing that's preventing me from doing what I know is what the platform is for, or at this point, right? So like, I think that the idea of like, oh, I don't want to switch over, I'm sure that comes up for you with your coaching clients, and even for your reel. And then like the reels shoots can be almost like their stepping stone into being able to like, okay, embrace that video is the thing now. Video is going to be continue to be the thing. So can you kind of walk us through, because you had that experience, like how do reels days go for a brand new client who is somebody who's rarely puts video up on social?
Yeah, I would say that 95% of our reels clients don't have, like, they haven't created a reel before. If they have, they usually do it after they book with us, and they're like, well, shit, I'm investing thousands and thousands of dollars, I might as well dip my toes. But yeah, and I would say probably 50% of our like done for you reel clients are ones who use us quarterly, and they basically are, they're usually like 7-8 figure clients who are just like, I know that this is what's moving the needle. I want to spend my time in my zone of genius. So you guys live on the app. You guys are the experts. Just write all my shit. All my business goals, right? Just tell me what to do and where to show up. And that's probably 50%. And then the other 50% are actually made of women entrepreneurs who want to dip their toes, but are completely fucking overwhelmed by it. Right. And they have, of course, all of these blocks that are just like, oh, I want it to be perfect, and I want to do like the really good ones. And, I'm afraid of looking a little messy online. And so they're like, let me do this once with you, use you guys to literally help me dip my toe. And then they go on creating like a massive amount on their own. And we work as that stepping stone. So, did I answer your question?
Sure did. So in general, you see sometimes your reel shoots almost as like that first courageous step into reels, and and by doing that, not only the investment, but also like putting themselves in front of the camera with people who are supportive can get them there. And I think that's a big part of it. And I don't always own this as a part of my coaching, but part of my coaching is like helping people like understand the reality of what it is to build a business online at the moment. Like what the reality is that we need to see the people behind the scenes. Like how many times I talk to a CEO, they're like, I don't got to do social media. And I'm like, well, here, a couple of years ago, maybe not, but now our generation, the generation coming behind us, like we want to know who we're giving our money to. And like a lot of that has to do with being in the social content on a regular basis.
And I think it really speaks as well to creating really like well-rounded content, like you were saying, 10 years ago, you didn't need to show your face. It wasn't like an absolute must for people who are in service-based, right? Like businesses and really are the face of their companies. But I say I blame and give credit to Etsy, right? They were the first ones to put that little like profile picture when people buy stuff, and it really shifted the consumer buying decision and the way that we do buy, because previously, right, 10, 15 years ago, it was all about like, spending your good money on the best value, right? Basically the cheapest price for the most that you can get. And that's so far from how people buy these days, right? People want to know, like you said, who they're giving their money to. And they care about it so much that they're willing to pay someone that they like, someone that they love, someone that they can relate to and see a little bit of themselves in who they are. They're willing to pay them 10 times more. So in where I sit is like, we're all in this thing, right? This isn't a little hobby. This isn't like a part-time thing until we figure out what the fuck we're going to do, right? At least not anymore, right? 6 years ago, maybe, but today, like, we're all in this shit. And video showing up and putting your face out there, like your business deserves it, right? If we're here, we might as well give this business like everything that it's got. And nowadays you can't really say that you're giving it everything that it deserves without showing up.
I freaking love it. For anyone who gets to see this video, I'm like literally like, yeah, yes, like I could like nodding so heavily here. And I think that's a big side of this, is that like, you know, like adding purpose and passion behind your business is what's going to put it out, is what's going to make things work. I think there's in any form of marketing, when I'm like, okay, what's the purpose? Why did you decide to do this? Like some clients are like so into it, they know exactly what they're going to say. Other clients are like, I'm going to just do it because you know, it makes me money, and like I can do it all day. And I'm like, all right, let's keep digging. And like sometimes that turns into like big eureka moments and they love it. Other times that turns into a bit of a crying session because they never thought about this and they never thought about how this kind of moves them. So whenever they like, so the reason why I find this important is, one, we want to know your purpose. We want to know why you want us to buy from you, or that you decided to build this business. But the second thing is that, just like you're saying, like showing up, we're putting more of ourselves out there. We're not putting all of ourselves. I want to be clear about this, but we're putting more of ourselves out on the internet. So of course, whenever we have that block of like, oh, am I confident on camera? Like, do I look insane when I'm doing this? Am I like, can I really do this silly reel or this lip sync or this thing? Like, yeah, because if you tie it to your purpose, you're going to be like, of course I'm going to do this, because one, I get to have a little fun with it. I think the biggest thing about reels is that it's almost like like you're attracting the kid in you again. Like how many, like, I know people want to bitch about the dance trends and all of the things, but yeah, you don't have to dance, but why not from time to time? Because it's like, it's releasing this, like, I have to be in a blazer and a tie and like do work, versus like, I get to show the version of me that I like. I can show you how excited I am to be here. And I think when it comes down to talking about video, aside from, you know, the strategies and how important it all is that this is actually going to be a place that if you do it right, social media is going to feel good again. Like if you do video right for you, it's going to feel as if you are putting yourself out there. And I think the biggest metric that is going to really benefit you is that if you're able to showcase who you are in real life through video. And I think that's why TikTok's doing it a little better than I think Instagram is at the moment. But the more people do this, the more excited they are. So for you, when you're saying showing up for your business, sometimes it's the first time people have to do that. Like, how do you help people? Like, what's some common blocks that you normally run into when the camera gets turned on, when you're just starting to build reels for a client?
Gosh, so many blocks. I think one of the biggest that we run into is this, you know, want and sometimes unfortunately need to show up perfectly. And I always tell my clients this, like, perfect is dead. It's dead. Like nobody.
Perfect is dead. It's like RIP perfect. We all knew it was bullshit from the beginning. The tombstone is here. Yeah. Perfect is dead. Got it. All right. Yeah. Keep going. Sorry.
You know, like this very one-dimensional version of us that you said, you know, suited up in a fucking blazer, never making any mistakes, like just being 100% business, like all of that is, you're right. It was bullshit from the beginning, and it doesn't sell and it doesn't work. So why are we still trying to pretend that we're back in corporate, right? Like we dropped out for a fucking reason, and the people that we want to work with don't buy into that bullshit. So literally, like, you know, the first thing we do is talk about that, like, let's let that go, right? And really what comes after that is a fear of judgment. And who could blame you? Who could blame you? Like, no matter what we say, even fucking Gary Vee sometimes is, you know, a little intimidated and afraid of what people might think. I think he's got probably a great rebound time. You know, look, I love me some fucking Gary Vee.
I've actually met him in person. He is exactly who he is online. He's exactly who he is online.
I love it. And so, yeah, I think that's the second thing that we have to let go of is like, okay, are we really going to let the fear of what our grandparents say, some people from fucking high school that have nothing to do with who we are now and what our business is about, are we really going to let the fear of their judgments stand in the way of doing this thing fucking big? Absolutely fucking not. Absolutely not.
Nah. I love this. I want one because it speaks directly to how I feel. This speaks directly to how I feel, is that like creating a business, being an entrepreneur is this like huge and beautiful and bold and scary as fuck step to being like your actual self. So like the podcast is called Limitless for the fact that like part of doing all of this is that you're going to hit your limits and we're going to break through them each and every step of the way. And exactly what you're saying, the worry of the relationship. So like, what will my high school boyfriend from freshman year think of this? What will like my friend who I haven't talked to all week, or what will my snarky friend who we always make jokes together think of this? And it's like you decided to think about everybody outside of yourself instead of like, how in the hell will this make me feel? And I can tell you, when I post a reel that feels edgy to me, the first second of the post is like, ugh. And then the next second of the post, like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I'm in this. But it's like, there's all these little risk moments you get to take about your personal identity that gets to be expansive and more and more. And I think the perfectionism piece is huge. And while we're saying it's dead, we're over here like we're going to war against it. We're going to make sure it stays dead, because it's a part of, and I think it's a little heavier on women than it is on men. I'm sure
Absolutely.
men don't have a piece of this, but like we were trained to have to look a certain way, be a certain way. Like I certainly know that like the more I've done this, the more I have more of a love for my body. But there was definitely moments when I was first starting that I absolutely like, I look awful. I can't do that. Like I can't be in it. And I know that there's different versions of that for everybody, where they think like some grammar is going to mess somebody up with a post. That if they don't hit it as good as this trained social media specialist that's been doing this for 10 years, that it's not good enough to post. And there's just so many limiting beliefs internally that prevent us from doing the thing, like I said, that makes you want to fucking dance when you press post, when you press publish. So I love that. Yeah, perfectionism being number one. So how do you help someone like in the moment whenever they're like worried about how they're looking during your real shoot? How do you help them kind of get out of their head when it comes to perfectionism?
Well, I think when we're shooting them, we, like me and my team here at Elixir, we are the ultimate hype girls. So for us, like when we're in person, it really is just about, transferring that energy, that hype energy, that fucking queen energy, that like, fuck it, I'm going to show up as I am because I am fucking powerful right now in this moment, and that to me, like that's the easy way, right? When we're standing there in front of you. What's a little bit more challenging is, we offer reel services where we create the reels for you, and then they film it themselves and then they send it back to us. And that has a lot more sticky points, right? Because we're not there to tell them go, and we're not there to say, hey, like, this, might not be perfection in your eyes, but this is damn fucking good to us. Like, let's roll with it. And I think when we're talking to those type of clients, well, one, we always baby step them in it. So we rarely start off like with people who are hesitant. We rarely start off with the like bust down the doors with oozing confidence and sexiness reels. We'll start with something easy, like the ones that you make in Canva, right? Like literally step number one, put your phone up, sit at your desk, take a time lapse of you working, and then throw up your to-do list on top of it, like in text. And that's your first reel. Like it can really be that simple, and it can be that easy. Or, even if the time lapse is like, sometimes I get some resistance against a time lapse. I'll just tell them, okay, well, fine, you go on a walk and take a 5-second video of some beautiful scenery, whether it's the sky, the tree, your feet walking on the sidewalk. And we'll use that and create some kind of, again, just B-roll that allows us to kind of take the pressure off bit by bit by bit. And the beautiful thing, is there are so many different types of reels. Often we get so focused on the ones that we hate and that we don't want to do. And we allow it to stop us from showing up. But again, if we can kind of take a second, zoom out a little bit and say, oh, well, I don't have to start by showing my face. I can start by taking some B-roll on a walk. I can start by, by downloading, some of my stories where I share tips, just talking to the camera and share, just put that into reel and post it. There we go, So I think, again, it's bit by bit, because if you try to start off with reels by doing it perfectly and by, thinking about all of the different ways that you can, it can feel very overwhelming. And it's like my laundry roll. I'm the only person in my house who puts away laundry. Okay. And
What?
I know. But the thing is I can never just put a basket away. If I ever think about putting the whole basket away, the laundry fucking sits there forever, right? Like literally weeks. But if I walk past it and I say, okay, Kristina, just put one fucking sock away, one sock, and then you're done, right? I'll gladly be like, yeah, fuck yeah, let me grab this shit, put it away. 15 minutes later, I've put away the whole basket.
Oh my God, exactly.
I just had an amazing speaker come and talk to my team about how to tackle things that are overwhelming, right? And what that does to our nervous system, and sympathetic versus parasympathetic. And what was really enlightening about this is I was like, oh my God, this is how our Reels clients feel sometimes. They go into that, fight, flight, or freeze mode. And a lot of times they just get stuck because they're so overwhelmed by the laundry basket. And so again, just by having, one thing at a time, this week, make it a goal to post a quote that you really like, and put it in Canva and do it with some B-roll of the fucking wall for all I care, right? Just start by there. And then week 2, do a tip that you're talking to the camera, and let that be enough. Let that one, step towards showing up be a win on its own.
I love this. I absolutely love this. I like to call this little acts of rebellion against your limits. So it's like, so you're taking these little acts of like, oh, I can't do reels. And you're like, well, are you sure you can't do reels? What if we did it this way? And then we do, and then you do that one. And then like, oh, okay, I can't do reels. And then I do the next. And then I decide to do one that's a little more difficult. And like, right. Like really pushing myself out there. I think I first started with people that like before reels were taking off, I would do the selfie video challenge. So it would be where in your stories, you would talk for 1 minute every day during the week, just to get on camera, just to do it. We can talk all about what happens because of it, but the idea was like, get comfortable, get confident, feel into it, for the fact that like, once you do that one thing, you're like, oh, that's not that bad. All right, I'll do this next thing. Like, oh, that's not that bad. And I think what you're saying is really fun, is the fact that like, yeah, there's no one way to create a reel. While I can encourage you to have a human element in it, it doesn't mean that every reel has to show your face. It doesn't mean that every reel has to be like you, like showing your entire day. And I think that's a big part of it, is that this is a new version of perfectionism. We're like, oh, if I'm going to do a reel, it has to be the best way to do the reel. And it's like, like that's a new version of perfectionism. Like I fall into it too. Like my eyes are always like, I want to do that trend. I want to try that. I want to try that. And then I get to a point where I'm like, okay, I don't have time for any of that. And I have to bring myself back. But I think for you, yeah, what's your little act of rebellion to be able to say like, oh, I can do a reel. Let me do this small way of doing it. And then the second thing I love with what you're saying is that when we're trying to grow as humans, when we're trying to grow as business leaders, it's really sometimes unkind to do it by yourself. Mm-hmm. Because we have some loud fucking voices in our head. We have some loud like critics of what it is, but sometimes we're doing something we've never done before, and having a hype crew, having a coach, having even just an accountability buddy that goes like, hey, you said you're going to do that. I'm here for you. I remember my first lives and my first stories and stuff, I would send it to a friend and go like, how awful is this? And they're like, it's great. It's like, chill. Yeah, like just, it's absolutely great. But being able to take it outside of yourself and having these people that want to see you thrive. I think that's why I love the coaching industry. Like we're invested in seeing people do well because we love the people. Like I have no problem saying I love my clients because I actually want to see them thrive. But the second thing is that like it behooves us to see you do well, because we can say like, look at how we help this client. So I think that like the biggest thing here is like, one, I want a Kristina Hive crew. I would love that. I've met some of Kristina's team and they're freaking amazing. So like I want that. but two, like, let's take this a step at a time. Just like anything else, like the little acts that we can make, it's going to build it ourselves up, which I love so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gosh. Well, we've talked about how to get started on video, but why the hell is it so important? And tell me a little bit about like kind of what you see right now when it comes to posting video, why an entrepreneur should make it a priority.
At this point, the ROI for video is undeniable. Like there's a lot about marketing that is very hard to prove, right? Like we know that only 50% of marketing works. And we also know it's absolutely impossible to nail down where it comes from because even if you're asking people, oh, where did you find me, right? They had so many different touch points with you and they'll just give you the one that's easiest for them to say, right? So, this was actually a huge thing that made it so easy for us again to make that transition from full service management to doing just reels, because up to this point, we haven't seen anything on, the Instagram app that gives such concrete ROI. And I mean, we're talking at very minimum 5 times the organic reach of a regular photo. To me, like there's just no arguing that, right? And my thing is like I love to maximize and optimize the effort that I put in. So if I'm going to put some energy into it, I'm going to make sure it's the thing that moves the needle the most, right? Like strategically in business, it no longer makes sense to not be sharing video. That was like a double negative, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like
we got it.
Yeah, it's just, again, like the increase in reach, the increase in visibility, right? The increase of the people who were able to reach and get our messaging out there. There's no denying it anymore. It's simply, I see, going from photos to videos just the same as, when social media came up, there was a lot of people who were resistant to it and thought, oh, well, I can keep doing things the old traditional ways. I can keep running ads in the paper, I can keep, doing these pamphlet type things and go, very boots on ground. And then everyone made that shift. And I feel like we're there with video. If you're not doing video, you might as well be putting ads in the yellow pages. Like, I'm sorry to put it that way, but this is a business decision at this point. Like, it's so easy to sit here and think, oh, well, is this me, right? As a person? Oh, am I someone as a person who would make these, funny reels and TikToks? But the question really that we should be asking ourselves is, am I willing to do what it takes to get my message out there to help more people and to have an impact on their lives? And if that answer is yes, like, we do a video, boo.
That is so perfect to say, because like in my mind, when people do like, I don't have time for this, or they'll say like, I don't have time for social media. Well, if that's true and you really don't have the time, then whatever time you do have, videos, period. Whatever time you do have, invested in video, for the fact that it's going to be seen. It's more likely, especially if you keep in the 30 second to 1 minute, like people are going to watch it all the way through. People are going to see your energy as a creator. If you decide to show your face, like all of this is going to work versus like, photos as it is right now, people swipe past a little more often, like unless it's like a branded photo and like really, really a showstopper in some way. So if you're looking to get more leads, video is where it's at. I think it's important to share in some ways that now like you were saying, video has been around, or let's call it short form video, has been around for almost 2 years at this point. Mm-hmm. And reach is still higher than photo posts. Reach is still higher than other places, but it's less. So for someone who's starting out brand new, who's starting to put out reels and they're seeing like it's not taking off like it used to and did all of these things, like how would you help somebody who is starting now to like fine, I'm in, I want to do the whole thing, and then they don't see what they hope to see when it comes to views when they get started?
Yeah, I think, well, one, I would recommend taking the pressure off when you're getting started on anything, right? Like I think one of the sure ways to burn yourself out and to, just be so fucking over it very quickly is to only do it for the numbers, right? For those KPIs, because the truth is that, social media might be an app and and all of that stuff, but we're still human beings who are on there. So things are going to fluctuate, right? If you only show up when the numbers are good, right? Good, I'm doing air quotes, like you're going to fall off. But if you can show up whenever my numbers are lower, you know what I think, right? Because of course, right? I have low numbers. Sometimes I only reach a tenth of the people that I do on average. And when that happens, I think, goddamn, those people who are looking at this shit are fucking convinced as hell, right? Like those are my diehard people. And I'm so willing to show up just for them. Right. And so I think one, kind of getting out of the mindset already of like, oh, okay, well, I need this certain amount of numbers to mean that this is successful. Like, let's just get rid of that. And then secondly, I would say, you know, we're in this for the long run. Right. So let's use these numbers as a baseline and have fun figuring out how to build it from there.
I love that. I love that. It's a bit of a beginner's mindset where if there's anything to learn from continuously using social media to grow your business or even personally, it's being able to know that like, this is how to adapt through life. Embracing change is a big part of this. But again, if you're in it for the numbers, even if you were getting tons of the numbers, you're going to burn out. How many influencers do we know that like had not overnight, because I know many of them were creating a lot of content, but the idea that they had something go viral and they're so excited by it, but a month later they got to take a break because they were so focused on going viral instead of like, okay, why am I here? Or even the fact that like, yeah, whenever I get like, let's say instead of my normal like 1,000 views on something, I'll get like 100. My way of working back, like 100 people saw me today. 100 fucking people. Like, let's zero in on what actually is true. 100 people. And it's only a way that we get to build this skill. Like Kristina knows this, but I'm putting myself through a 30-day Reels challenge for the fact that like, I just want to play with this. Like, I want this to be a skill of mine. And I absolutely know that like, I want to get low numbers some days and I want us to share about that. But also by the time I finish this, I'm going to have learned a lot. And if I attached it only to numbers, I would have given up right at the get-go because it's not immediately turning into all of these views.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. Like we really have to remember, and I feel like I'm constantly reminding people, even in my audience who come to me and have these questions about low number reels, is like, oh, are we making reels for the views? Are we making it? Are we influencers now? Like, no, right? Like to your point, 100 people got your message today. If you did not show up on this platform, they wouldn't have heard it. They wouldn't have gotten it. So that's plus 100 people. Like I think when you're coming from that mindset, it feels so much more exciting, you know? And I'm a huge believer in whatever the fuck you are excited about, that's what you're going to do well. And that's what the fuck is going to sell. So I think really focusing, you know, and being intentional about how can I stay in that mindset and keep on this mindset is honestly essential to making it in this damn thing, being business in general.
Absolutely. Resilience comes from your mindset first. Absolutely. Kristina, you've been so gracious to give us so much time. One last question before we kind of turn off for the day. What does being limitless mean to you?
I have a philosophy about life that, you know, there really are no rules to this thing. And that lesson just keeps coming up, you know, whether it's about, you know, how I run my business, whether it's about who I choose to be on my team, how I choose who we work with, right? Who I am as a mother, as a wife, as a partner, as a friend, you know, how I make my fucking tea today, right? There really are no rules to this thing. And anytime I kind of remember that or relearn it, everything in my life explodes in the best way possible. And so to me, being limitless means being able to live my life and run my business and, you know, do that knowing that I can do it any fucking way that I want to.
Oh, I love it. I freaking love it. Yes. And we all becoming rebels. And Kristina can show you the path of how she's done it for herself. I love it. Kristina, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, your story. And like, you know, we got a little vulnerable today talking about how like, you know, it's real. We had to work through some limits ourselves. Thank you so much for sharing with us. How, in what way can someone work with you?
Yeah, so if you want to check us out, we're on Instagram, of course, at Elixir Media Co. And you can always just shoot me a DM.
I love it. I love it. We'll put all the links that you need for her in the show notes. Kristina, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.